Hi guys and welcome back. In this video we're going to learn about class composition. Composition is a counterpart to inheritance to build out classes that use other classes. You're going to be using inheritance very little in Python, if I'm honest. You're going to be using composition much more. Composition allows your classes to be simpler and reduces the complexity of your code overall, so it is recommended that you use that most of the time. In addition, composition means something different than inheritance when you're thinking about your classes. For example, we've got here a bookshelf class that takes in a quantity when you create it, and then when you print it out, it tells you that it's a bookshelf with X books. For example, here we're creating a bookshelf with 300 books. When you print it out, you can see that it says bookshelf with 300 books. If you wanted to create a book class now, some new programmers may be tempted to make it inherit from bookshelf. After all, they are somehow related, correct? Books live in bookshelves, so... And then you would do something like this, init, and then you would say the name of the book. But now, if you want this book to call the superclass's init method, you also need the quantity of books. So this is where this is starting to break down a little bit. A book object doesn't have a quantity of anything. So anyway, we are going to continue with our example because we firmly believe that a book should inherit from bookshelf. So you'll put your quantity in here, and then you'll say self.name equal name. Okay, perfect. Now, this, I'm sure you realize, makes little sense because you're passing the quantity to a book. So when you create a book object, you're going to have to say Harry Potter, and then you're going to have to say something like 120. Then if you print book, you'll get something out that's not all that good. You get bookshelf with 120 books when you print the book. So clearly, you're going to need an str method here that prints something completely different. So for example, book self.name. Okay, let's press play again. And now you get book Harry Potter. So why is this a bad approach? Well, there are two reasons. One of them is conceptual, the way of thinking about it. The other one is technical. The conceptual reason is that when you do inheritance, you are essentially treating it like evolutionary inheritance. You're saying that a book is a bookshelf and something more. For example, in the same way that all tigers are mammals, but not all mammals are tigers. So all books are bookshelves, but not all bookshelves are books. The bookshelf can still be used on its own. That breaks down when you talk about books and bookshelves because a book is something completely different from a bookshelf. A bookshelf can contain books, but one isn't the other. The technical reason why this breaks down is because you've got this book class that inherits from bookshelf, but actually you are not using inside it anything about the bookshelf. So you're completely overriding the str method because you don't want anything to do with bookshelves in there. And you actually don't need this at all because, I mean, what's the point of setting the quantity if you're not going to use it in the methods? So the conceptual reason is a book is not a bookshelf. The technical reason is there is no reason to inherit if you're not going to use that inheritance anyway. So this is where composition comes in. Composition is for when you want to say something like a bookshelf has many books. A bookshelf is composed of a bunch of things and books. So instead of defining our bookshelf and our book like this, we're going to define it slightly differently. Instead of setting the quantity of books in the bookshelf, we're actually going to allow the constructor to take in a number of books. So we will do star books, and then we'll say self.books equal books. And then here we will say bookshelf with len of self.books. So what this will take in is a bunch of book objects. Next up, the book class doesn't actually need, I'm going to delete this as well for now. The book class doesn't need to inherit from bookshelf, and it doesn't need a quantity, and it doesn't need to call the superclass of anything. Okay, so now we have two much simpler classes. But how do you use them? Well, we can create our book, and then we can create another book. just like that. So we have our 2 books here. Then we'll create our bookshelf and give it the 2 books. Then we can print the shelf. So I'll press play now, and you can see that you get bookshelf with 2 books printed out. This is composition, and this is very common, much more common than inheritance. It is when you have a class that contains a bunch of other classes, or a class that has many of that. And here we've got our bookshelf that has many books, and when you use it, when you create it, you can pass to it a bunch of your other book objects. So to recap, inheritance means that a book is a bookshelf. Composition means that a bookshelf has many books. So take your pick from those 2. That's an important decision to make, but as I said earlier, you'll most frequently be using composition. Thanks for joining me in this video to learn about composition in Python, and I'll see you in the next one.